What's up? We got Legends of Tomorrow, Season 2, Episode 9, Rangers of the Lost Art. Yeah, so anyway, this episode starts off with 5 months ago where we see Rip and he's running through the wave wire trying to just stop the atomic bomb and sees a time drive and sees a wooden stick, which we obviously know as the Spear of Destiny. So then we see Nate and he's listening to some music, waking up Nate and Ray and Amaya. And Ray kind of makes a joke about how he was like, hey, he and Amaya are sleeping, but not together. And he has to say it 2 times. And I'm like, Ray, we get by the first joke. Why you say it a second time? So yeah. So then we see Stein and he's walking through the way. We see Stein and he's walking through the wave ride where he sees Mick talking to himself. Well, we do know it's Leonard, but Mick doesn't. But Stein doesn't know that. And Stein thinks that Mick is talking to himself, saying about how he loves him. But he's like, you haven't heard anything. And he's like, yeah. He's like, you're a scientist, Mr. Scientist Stein. Can you please help him from stop seeing Snart every time? So then we see darhk and Merelyn just walking through the city when they bump into biker guys, and he's like, hey, give us your clothes, but they're like, yeah, no. And then they kill them, but one of the biker guys that they killed is now in operation because he would have became famous for a motorcycle device. So the legends have to go down to the good of the 1960s or 1970s. So we see Rip in his English accent, and so he's directing this movie where we see 2 characters playing Vandal Savage and Rip himself, but that's when they're interrupted, and that's when he's talking to George, and he's like, hey, what's going on? So then they're attacked by Damien and Merelyn, by darhk and Merelyn, and Merelyn's like, Rip Hunter, and he's like, now Rip Hunter and he's like, wow, Rip, you've really got an English accent, and you've gotten yourself an English accent, and so, but then when the legends show up and they're like, it's Rip, and he's like, yeah, who are you people? Because remember, he's like, who the crap are you? So, who the crap are you guys? So, they get into a fight. George gets scared off during the whole thing. George gets scared off during the whole encounter. So they have to, go and fight. So they have to, so yeah. So Rip gets arrested for the cops to see something's wrong, show up. They see Rip, and Rip gets arrested for doing nothing. So they're like, yeah, we gotta get Rip. And Jax is like, hey, there's something wrong with Rip. He was hitting him with a non-lethal weapon. That's basically how he said it. And so they're like, maybe it's time distortion like he did with them. So they're like, so he's like, hey, what's going on with you guys? And he's like, yeah, he's helping him with migraines. And he's like, yeah, he's got a bad headache. So he's like, we need your help. Rip's in danger. Rip's alive. He's in the 60s, and he's in trouble. And he's like, yeah, so can you pretend to be his therapist? So they decide to pretend to be. So Martin goes and pretends to be Rip's therapist, and Rip's like, he's like, his name was Phil Gasma. So he's like, that guy, we need to get him under straight observation because he keeps rambling on about how he sees people from the future. So he's like, I have to leave with this guy. I don't have any. And Sarah, I don't have any doctor. And she's like, Sarah tries to say, hey, your name is Rip Hunter. And he's like, no, Rip Hunter's just some guy in his imagination. Yeah, Rip, you're crazy. So, Rip's some guy in his imagination. So, yeah, so back on the way. Ryder, Nate and Ray start being weird. Because they don't remember any scientific stuff. So they're like, so she's like, Gideon, what's wrong? And he's like, yeah. So yeah, so there's a G for, there's a G Lucas. And he's like, is that your gluten? Is that the gluten you pretend to have, right? And he's like, no, his gluten is really real, but he does know of a George Lucas who's a car salesman. And he's like, how does he know that? And they're like, hey, do you know anything about George Lucas? And he's like, he became a car salesman through 1990, 1996, 1997, and 1998. Obviously, that. So they're like, so basically, Brain, because, so they're like, is there a timeline where he does something else? And it's like, yeah, so in the timeline that we know, he becomes a movie maker and creates great films like Star Wars and Indiana Jones and Howard the Duck, even though Howard the Duck isn't that great, but that comes back later. I will make that. But yeah, so anyway, so she's like, Ray, when as a child, Ray saw Star Wars, and that basically inspired him to become an inventor. And Nate saw Ray Lost Ark, and that basically made him become a historian rather than becoming a yoga teacher. Ray would have became a heart surgeon, which is okay. So they're like, they're like, we gotta get George Lucas back into filmmaking. So they're basically, he basically just quits film school and throws everything out the window onto a garbage compactor, because without that we wouldn't have the great thing that is Star Wars. We all know that without that, Star Wars wouldn't be a thing. So obviously we have to defend so they have to defend Star Wars. So they decide so they basically decided to give him a good speech about how, about how he wants to, but without Star Wars or Indiana Jones, without Star Wars, Ray becomes a heart surgeon, and without Indiana Jones, he becomes a yoga teacher. Okay, so basically, that's after that confrontation. After my talks with him, Damien, Dark, and Malcolm Merelyn confront him, and Damien, Dark, and Malcolm Merelyn confront Rip, and they're like, they confront Lucas, and they're like, hey, give us a spear, and he's like, what's a spear? And he's like, what's the spear of destiny? And he's like, your prom guy said that you have it. And he's like, whatever I had, I threw it down the garbage chute. So they basically throw him in the garbage compactor. And they find it, but they're like, hey, don't give it to the bad guys. And they're like, hey, George Lucas, what do you really want to do? And he's like, he wants to direct, which basically gives them back all their power. Basically gives them back their powers. Huh? How does that work? Like he says, "Oh, I want to direct," and then bam, powers back. How does that work? I don't understand that. So back on the Wave Rider, Sarah discovers that basically the legends are used as characters in Rip's movie, in Phil's movie. So he's a cat. So she's getting into captain. He's like, I'm not captain. I'm just a normal guy. And she's like, so with Captain Hunter, he didn't have superpowers. But if you mean for his like big heart, so Phil decides to. So as the legends are being defeated by the Legion of Doom, which is the name Nate decides to call him based on an old Hanna-Barbera cartoon, Rip decides to show up with the British accent, only to reveal that it's not his. When the gun starts working, he reveals that he's faking it. So he's like, Gideon, fire everything, but the Legion steal Rip, and they basically I like this fight scene as Sarah and Jax are walking out. They see Martin performing a mixed brain. They're like, Stein, what are you doing? And he's like, brain surgery, and they just like, okay, and just leave. So yeah, so there's a movie night after Sarah feels bad about the Legion having Rip. So after the whole, defeating the bad guy, Nate and having all the memories back, Nate, Amaya, and Ray, I almost forgot his name, all have a movie night where here's the joke, where they're like, hey, let's see Empire. They're like, no, let's see Star Wars. And they're like, no, let's see Where's the Last Dark. She's like, how about we see a movie called Howard the Duck? And they're like, yeah, no, we're not seeing that. Yeah, that was kind of funny. Because Amaya's from the 40s, of course you wouldn't know what Howard the Duck is. Or George Lucas. So, yeah. Yeah. So then we see Rip. We see Phil, and he's being captured by the Legion of Doom, and he's like, and he's being interrogated by Eobard-Thawne, and Eobard-Thawne's like, hey, I know, we know where you must know where the other 4 spirits are. So anyway, that's the end of the episode, and I thought this episode was pretty good. I liked seeing Rip back, even though he wasn't Rip, he was just a guy with an English accent. It was kind of funny having all the Star Wars references. In one of the jacket scenes, I think, right, yeah, basically Jax was rocking a fin-like jacket in the episode. If you see from the picture, I'm probably going to put the top thumbnail, you can see Jax wearing a fin-like jacket. A Poe Dameron / fin-like jacket. So anyway, that was it for this video, and I'll see you next time for more Legends of Tomorrow. Bam, well.